Hello, Professor Yossi Shain. It's good to see you
Hi,
again,
it's a great pleasure as always, Pierre. Good to see you, and I hope
and I'm
you're
thankful
well.
that you appeared. Yeah, I'm well. I'm well, thank you. And how are you doing?
I'm okay. Thanks so much.
It's kind of lockdown there on your end of the world.
It is not we had several rounds
Mm.
um, of lockdowns and opening, and the government, I think, is not so well equipped to deal with the situation, the ways they interpret the condition. They move between hysteria to confusion. So you can see how the decision making processes are not really good ones, and they're all kind of like intertwined with personal issues of the prime minister, who is also, as you very well know, involved in a very shaky coalition, and they also is facing charges of corruption, which will
Mm.
be started to be reviewed by the courts in February. So everything is somewhat in the same pile. And then the international arena. So, but things are moving in the Middle East arena, which is interesting and good. Since we
Yeah.
spoke after the deal with UAE and Bahrain, and now with Sudan, and other things are coming. But everybody's also waiting for the American elections exactly a week from now. Hopefully, we
Yeah.
will have the results, because America in itself is in a turmoil of sorts, and no one knows what will happen.
Mm.
So all of this
Mm.
will certainly impact everything that we're doing also geopolitically.
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. And by the way, as you mentioned, and uh, the developments about with the normalization relationships with Israel, it is growing day by day. It's like a fashion now. It's becoming a
I
fashion
think
now. Now Oman is in the list, and then I just heard that Djibouti is also working on it, and
I
Saudi
think
Arab.
yeah, I think that many people understand, the old rivalries. Not that they've exhausted themselves, but they were in many ways were manufactured in a sense around one theme, and the theme of the Palestinian Israeli conflict, which is still an outstanding issue, of course. But I think that what happened is that after so many years of bloodshed and rivalries within the Arab and Muslim world, and I don't have to tell you the bickering of Shiite and Sunnis and what happened in Syria. We talked about it in Iraq, and with the presence of Iran vis-a-vis Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. Many people kind of awakened to the fact that maybe they have been taken hostage to a much minor conflict which got so much presence in world affairs. And the language was
Mm.
as if the Palestinian issue is the key issue for all the Arab and Muslim world, while they had other issues and everything was stymied because of that. And suddenly they
Mm.
saw that the Palestinians themselves don't know what they really want of themselves and are bifurcated, etc., etc. And the world is moving
Mm.
and things are continuing. And when there was a kind of an awakening to this condition, people starting to rush into it to say, look, what are we doing? We have to take care of ourselves. And this is what's happening with the UAE and Bahrain. You will see tens of thousands of Israelis, tens of already booking hotels in UAE and Dubai for Christmas break or for vacation, and the deals are being cut with the high tech industry and billions of dollars. People say, why we haven't done it before? We did do it to some degree, but we haven't. Of course, there is also the
Yeah.
element of the American administration, which was vehement about pushing it. And then
Mm.
as we said, the condition in the Middle East itself. There is no reason Saudis will not talk to us and not be with us. I mean, then just as much as we spoke before, there is no reason that the Pakistanis will not start to talk to us.
Yeah, of course. Yesterday, day before yesterday, I was discussing this matter with a friend online with your colleague and your friend, Dr. Michael Brack. I was saying
Yes.
him that we have serious conflicts with India. We have fought three, four wars with India, but still we believe that our issues will be resolved on table talk or through table talk. So directly we don't have any conflict with Israel.
Yeah,
Why
and
not uh, have a relation? And if you and me have differences, Professor Yussi, so now in this era and in this modern world, we have to sit together and talk about those differences, talk about our issues,
yeah,
and that is the way to go forward. Now it's 21st century. One cannot just uh, be in the state of denial that okay, Dr. Yossi Shain, because I have uh, some reservations and differences with you, so I don't recognize your being. That is not the way anymore.
I think that
I have
is
to recognize that there is a personality, Dr. Yossi Shain. Yes, I have the differences. So let's sit together and talk about our differences and let's create a way or path for peace.
look, as you very well know, there were so many, or still, vilifications, demonization, things which had to do with all kind of like mythologies and stories and whatever. And if
Yeah.
you are caught in them, and if you are nourished by them, and if the leadership is directing them towards you, so that's what happened. It's very tough to change it, and the pictures that you are seeing are very skewed. These are the pictures that you are kind of like almost automatically trying to watch without understanding what's going on. If I will be if Pakistan will be described to me only as an extreme state of
Yeah.
Islamic extremism dominated by Al Qaeda and so on. So if this is the picture I have, and I know very much otherwise.
Yeah.
So I said okay, and since we are far away and so on, but we are much smarter than that. We understand, and we have to be careful in our words, and generous with our patience,
Yeah.
and start to understand how much is truly connecting us. And it's not going to be done overnight, because politics has its ways, and those who have been exposed to such vilification for too long and are caught in an ideology or leadership that is not ready to do it will try to sabotage it. So you have to do it smartly, and it goes on all sides. You have to do things smartly and understand that there are mutual interests to begin with. And that's what happened with the UAE.
That's right.
And that's what happened now with
Hmm.
Sudan. I'm not saying
Hmm.
immediately people fall in love with each other. It can happen too.
Yeah.
But you go gingerly into the relations. You see what you get, what you don't get. And secondly, you start to recognize the other as a human being. You don't dehumanize them.
Yeah.
You don't kind of like see them as villains and as evils, as people are often described, because
Yeah.
when you when you act like that, or you see the other side acting vis-a-vis yourself to the rivals, you are in a different
Hmm.
position. All of it is known. We know these things.
I agree. I agree. And by the way, Dr. Yusishin, as you have lots of experience in diplomacy, I wanted to ask you one thing. What are the mayors, not on the state level or the government level? I am not a part of government. I'm not a part of state. but I am a Pakistani, very much Pakistani, own my country, love my country, passionate about my country. What should be the measures or what should be the tools people like me and you adopt to go towards normalization of our relationship?
I think there is an interest. I got a phone call the other day
Mm.
from one of the ministers in the government asking me about the talks with you because he
Ah,
read it in the because he read it in the Israeli paper. Remember, it was covered by the Israeli paper,
yeah, yeah.
and I told him about it, and he was very excited about the prospects.
Mm.
And someone has to make a move. Now, these
Yeah,
moves can come in several ways. One is like the discussion we start now, and people are
yeah,
exposed to our conversation
yeah.
and tune up and start to see. Then we enlarge the circle. We can enlarge the
Mm.
circle with other intellectuals, with
Mm.
professionals. For example,
Mm.
we have lots of conversations
Mm.
with people on COVID right now around the globe. So people want to study from each other. We are now in a very advanced stage of developing a vaccine in Israel. We just learned. So there is, of course, almost a contest who will develop it first. But we have a very good, I think, chance to be leading the way. So, our health system, we can talk about health system. We can talk about things which are not seem to the other as touching the nerves all the time. And
Mm.
then start to define what are these nerves? What are these nerves all about? Where do they come from? Why? Each
Mm.
and our region and our states is still vulnerable to lots of things. One should not
Mm.
underestimate the
Yep.
difficulties ahead. We still have a war on our
Mm.
border with Gaza almost on a daily basis. One should not forget that. And
Sure.
the Islamic movement of Hamas, which controls
Mm.
Gaza,
Mm.
still holds that Israel should not exist and they will never yield, and so on and so forth. So this is something that
Mm.
has to be taken. You cannot ignore reality also. But
Mm.
despite the fact that the Gulf countries have supported Gaza and so on, when they decided to move with Israel, and the people of Gaza were trying to boycott them or to say you cannot act like that, they were very angry about it. They said to the Palestinians, "You are people who do not know how to think us. We give you money and support you, and you tell us how to behave. You are why?" So
Mm.
I think that the Palestinians are also listening. They see that you
Mm.
cannot, like just develop their own mindset that we have to have an eternal rivalry with Israel, and because the
Mm.
Palestinians started to burn the flags of the UAE or to the
Mm.
flags of Sudan and so on, said, "What? We gave you," and you see what happened now with the Mr. Bandar in Saudi Arabia, who gave this very elaborate interview, was the ambassador of
Mm.
Saudi Arabia in Washington, condemning the Palestinians of
Mm.
holding them hostage and cursing them because of their entering talks. I said, after so
Mm.
many years, when we give billions of dollars to you, you think that you dominate what we're going to think and do. So I'm not
Mm.
saying it requires fighting with the Palestinians. On the contrary, I think
Mm.
it requires to tell the Palestinians, come alone also. Start to think freshly. Start to put
Mm.
and maybe join us in an effort to unify this
Mm.
and start to see realistically what can be done. And once
Mm.
we move with Arab and Muslim world into a posture of negotiations, deals, peace, agreements, they can become also much more efficient or effective
Mm.
in claiming on behalf of the Palestinians or speaking if they want, or not to see it as a zero sum all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And yes, there is a possibility. There is a possibility to see the things with a different angle now. We have to change our angles now. it is like deleting the old program from your memory and installing a new version of the program, and uh, trying to see a new dimension of the possibilities.
Yeah, I think you need to change the mindset and try to be more honest, each and one of us, with your story that you tell, because we tell stories. We have a framework from within we think. Sometimes these are not just like falsifying stories, sometimes are based on experiences. And
Hmm.
experiences are creating fears and experience, but also they create a certain framework which is very difficult to change. So what we need is not just to change the story, we need to do two things, and that's a very delicate balance. We need to act as a result of that, a little bit changing your story, act again, changing story, seeing how we evolve. Things are
Hmm.
evolving, and it's not just that you move from righteous to villains. No, you don't. You basically say, okay, these are what it is. Let's see. We revise our thoughts. We rethink. We debate. We talk. We open a table in academia. We open a table in diplomacy. We share theater. We share soccer, football. You have cricket. We don't. We have lots of things, but so many things that can be done. We have diaspora people in the United States and can start to talk,
Yeah.
and lots of things. Many avenues and channels can open, and they can open simultaneously, and
Hmm.
then they start to build on each other. And it always requires that in the end of the day, the top leadership will be ready to do so and not be afraid, and take some courage and make a step. Once this happens, it really breaks the ice so quickly, and sometimes it has costs. I will remind you that when Anwar Sadat
Yeah.
was the first to break the path toward peace with Israel in 78, and he
Yeah.
went and he made a bold move, which was
Hmm.
remarkable move. I remember it like it was today. This was the
Hmm.
movie made in October 77, exactly today as you wish, 43 years ago. And he landed in Tel Aviv. Just landed. And I remember it like today that people did not believe that he will come out of the airplane. They said, it can't be.
Hmm.
They said, it can't be. I remember sitting there watching, said, will it get really come out of the airplane? It will be Anwar Sadat, the arch enemy of Israel, the Egyptians. And then he came, and people were starting to dance in the streets. Simple
Okay.
as that. And he came to the Knesset, to the Israeli parliament, and spoke to the people of Israel. And it was not just conciliatory talk. He spoke harshly about this, that, and that, but they listened. And they all stood up and cheered because he made a bold move. And Begin went to Cairo, and there's still negotiations. And they signed a deal. Against Begin has opponents at home, and Anwar Sadat had opponents in Egypt. Regretfully, he was assassinated, as you know, in 81 during the military parade. But this required such a bold move, and he did it. And so people have to have courageous leadership. And sorry for the camera, just a second. And courageous leadership is not always easy to come by, but it's really, but until you get to that point, you can do a lot of things, especially among nations like ours that never fought against each other. We didn't have any fights. We never had any
No.
fights with
No.
the UAE. We didn't have any, we never had any, God forbid, things, so it's much easier. There is no,
Yeah. We had the alliance, by the way,
yeah,
during the
yeah,
Cold War in Afghanistan. We had a good alliance.
yes. And so I'm saying, um, you know, people are not so invested, in Israel when I speak about Pakistan. So people know
Hmm.
where Pakistan, but they're not invested in any enmity toward Pakistan. They don't, they
Hmm.
know that Pakistan, so, but they don't have any enmity toward Pakistan. They understand, those who are kind of like familiar with the world or are interested in the world. Not so many, people are more going on the day-to-day life and not dealing with it. But yeah, I think this is how it should go.
And by the way, just hypothetically, I was thinking, uh, let's calculate on the things. What Israel can offer Pakistan? I know technology is the first product which Israel can offer to anyone, and then maybe quality education. You have wonderful universities. We have the highest number of youth in the world, so education can be a good thing to have. And in an agricultural field, you are amazing people. We are agricultural land, uh, facing the problems with water. And what more?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
It's not a matter what Israel can give. I mean, there are lots of expertise here,
yeah,
and there are lots of curiosity. Israelis are known for their curiosity and free spirit.
mm,
So first of all, they are big travelers. I don't know if you know, but Israelis are one of the bigger travelers in the world. Israelis who, in the age of 21, are taking a year off and just traveled. All of them. You find them all over the place. You will see
mm,
them in India. You will see them in Brazil. You will see them in Mexico. They're just like charting their way, like walking the world. They are interested because it's such a small country and the Middle East was not open to them. So just take a bag and go. My daughter travels all the time. She goes to Sri
that's
Lanka. She goes to India. She goes to Bali. She goes all the time. She just get, they travel. This is kind of like almost, they love to travel and explore the world. Secondly, they have love um, of knowing other cultures and languages, which is nice.
that's right.
Thirdly, we have
That's
expertise, as you say. Look, Israel is a country known for lack of water. For years, I
mm,
grew up. We used to shut the faucet. We used to have all the time these commercials that we are drying up, that we have only small lake in the Galilee, and there's no rain, and there is no rain. We are like almost in hysteria, right? So we grew up without any water. The big wars between Israel and Jordan and Syria were always about what will happen to the water, because will the Syrian divert the Jordan River? Will the Jordanians? These are the questions they used to ask when I grew up. Lo and behold, over the years, because of lack of water, we became expert in desalination, and now we
mm.
sell water. We sell water to Turkey. We sell water to this. We produce more water than we need. So it's
Excellent.
it's it's crazy. Israel sells water because we
Mm,
have so much water because we develop so much expertise in desalination. We have shrunk our agricultural um, areas because of
mm,
people became more high tech oriented and not
mm,
agriculture oriented. But yet we developed such expertise in growing products in the desert with all kind of like techniques. So we sell more
mm.
products abroad. For example, now we are selling avocado suddenly to Japan for the first time this week. Japanese
Wow,
market needs avocado for all their sushi, whatever. Suddenly Israel is exporting massive avocado. We export to Europe usually. So lots of things can happen, and it's not because of governmental policies. It's because of human ingenuity and free
yeah.
spirit, and that's why we are now um, so much. Once we open up to China in the last 15 years,
Mm,
most of our things are going to be with China. We do with India, as you know. We do lots of businesses all over. And now with the UAE, it will be huge businesses, huge.
that's great.
With so we, I'm sure that and medical
Yeah,
facilities. So I'm sure that you have your own expertise. We have our own expertise, and
yeah,
we can benefit from each other.
yeah. True. And by the way, you just mentioned in your about Turkey. There's a misconception, or it's it's like that Israel had always bad relation with Turkey and Iran.
We
Strict
had,
as historically, because as far as I know, before this Islamic revolution, Iran was very close with Israel,
of course.
and
Look,
Turkey from the day first till date now, they are they are having good diplomatic ties with Israel.
there are two things happened. Israel had very good relations with Iran early on, with it, and relations, but Iran was controlled by the Shah. And Israel had companies
Mm,
working in Iran early on, already in the 1950s. We were a young state at that time. We were dealing with real estate, lots of things. We had good relations. But the Iranian Revolution of 79 marked Israel as the small Satan, America as the great Satan, and Israel as the small Satan. And of course,
mm,
they blamed Israel for supporting the Iranian Shah and so on. And ever since, we have no relation whatsoever with Iran. We are
mm,
the nemesis of Iran, who time and again promised to basically wipe us out of the map. With Turkey,
mm,
we had ups and downs. Turkey, of course, its relation with the Middle East changed dramatically,
mm,
and it's changed also with regard to Europe. And in the last 2 decades, with Erdogan, he became
mm,
quite hostile to Israel.
mm,
And but the Turks themselves have good relation with Israel. So we have kind of like a very interesting. It's not a lovey kind of like dance. Suspicion is there because the
mm,
Turkish people really enjoy Israeli visitors, and many Israelis travel to Turkey and so on and so forth. But Erdogan is having a different perspective on the Middle East. He condemns the Arabs and the Muslim countries who sign with the Middle East. But he also has big rivalry with the Arab states. He is the
mm,
nemesis of Sisi in Egypt. He
mm,
is the man who now fights with Macron. He fights. He
mm,
wanted to create an Ottoman Empire again, and in his vision, the Ottoman Empire had. So he was stalking many of the radical movements. He was supporting them in the Middle East because he had his own vision about what he regarded as moving Turkey into more of, let's say, an Islamic democracy within his vision. So that kind of created a rupture, but it's not a
mm,
full rupture. It's the bureaucracies and the elites are all understanding that we should not break relations. They don't. The fact of the matter, they don't. Um, and what happened is, which is interesting geopolitically, in the past, as you very well know, Pierre, during the 60s, there was a whole what we call Third World Alliance.
yeah.
And in the Third World Alliance, there were those kind of like who were with third world countries, and sometimes with or without the Soviet Union. So we were the rivals in our region were Greece. Greece was Israel's
Mm,
rival as part of the more socialist government. When Turkey, which is the arch rival of Greece, of course, historically,
mm, mm,
became hostile to Israel and so on,
mm,
the Greeks started to understand that we have to move toward Israel because Israel may protect us. And now we
mm,
have a strategic and economic alliance with Greece and Cyprus,
mm,
almost intimate relations. I just came back, I can tell you, from Greece 2 weeks ago.
mm,
All the Israelis are in Greece. They don't go to Turkey, they go to Greece. Turkey is very upset about it, but we have amazing relations. And the Greeks understand that Israel is a great alliance and with the United States. So things are changing
mm,
because people are opening their head and say, okay, Israel has grew. Also, we're talking about a transformation which is remarkable in terms of population, in terms of wealth, and in terms of strength. Let's put it this way: we are no longer a very small country as we used to be. We are almost we cannot be compared to you, of course. You are an empire in terms of population, otherwise, but we are consolidated 10 million people almost. It's not a small country,
No,
and
it is not.
it's a mid size in Europe,
Yeah.
and so people have to reassess. And once we
Mm,
cross also the economic crisis of
mm,
2008 so well
mm,
and came out on the winner's sides
mm,
with the high tech industry. We just
mm,
had new investments here by Amazon, for example, who is
mm,
hiring here, and Google is hiring here,
mm,
and Microsoft is hiring. If you just drive through Tel Aviv, you
mm.
see that all the big companies are here. So there is a market. Hopefully, after the COVID, we will continue to prosper. So
Mm.
people are thinking about it, and they also understand that these wars and rivalries and wars, they didn't take them anywhere. They really didn't produce much. Think about what they produced in the end of the day, what was achieved by being the enemy of Israel. What did
That's
you gain in the end of the days?
nothing.
It's not that we didn't lose. We lost.
Yeah.
Whenever someone is our enemy, you spend so much energy about defending yourself and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Sometimes because of the security echelon, we developed kind of like new technologies in biology and in sciences and so on. It's true. It was a vehicle for the
Mm,
for the military industry in Israel to create the high tech industry. It's a direct connection. For example, in intelligence, young
mm,
Israelis who are serving in intelligence in the army today are the number one people on cybersecurity. So Israel was just declared the cybersecurity champion in the world in many ways. On no one second to us. I just have the data here. I'll show you that Israel produces 12% of cybersecurity in the world. Imagine, it's such a small country, 12%. The Chinese produce 12%
wow.
only, which is remarkable.
Yeah.
Uh, here, I'll tell you, I have the percentage here. This is a European Asgard Institute 2010 found that Israel ranks third in the world in the field of artificial intelligence, with 11% of the world market, after the United States 48% and China 12%. So these are these are amazing numbers for such a small
Yeah. These
place.
are.
So
Yeah.
lots of things happened, and I think
Mm.
the intelligence speak up. Like this is what it is.
That's very true. That's very true. Professor Yossi, I would like to ask you about Azerbaijan as well. The situation is it's unpredictable there. Players are changed. Like Iran is opposing Azerbaijan, as traditionally they are standing with Armenia. Turkey is taking side of Azerbaijan. You are the strategic partners with Azerbaijan for so long. How do you see the situation as an Israeli expert?
It's a very interesting question. You see, the whole relation with Azerbaijan, which is a Muslim state, um, it's quite a fascinating story. I'll tell you. When we go back to history, we see
Mm,
that in the 1990s, when the Soviet Union unravels, lots of things opened up, and people didn't know where they will open up. And we, of course, were looking for all kind of connections. Armenia, which is closer to us in terms of like we also have an Armenian quarter in the old city of Jerusalem and so on,
yeah.
and the Armenian church and so on. But Armenia was part of the Soviet Union and started to come to be after the collapse of the Soviet Union as an independent state in Yerevan. Initially with Petrosian and then Kocherian. I was
Mm,
involved at the time in my work on the diaspora as an exile. It was very interesting to me with the Dashnat party. It doesn't matter what it is, that we started to see what is happening. The alliances shifted. Azeris were open in Baku to us. They opened up in Baku during the heydays of the 1990s, and that became even more pronounced after the September 11 events. And they kind of open up. Now, the war in Nagorno-Karabakh started in the 1990s. We had nothing to do. We were very far away from there, so we didn't have anything. But at that time, there were some Jewish Americans who were interested in the region, especially because of the pipeline. And there was a law of the pipeline there, and with the Congress and so on. And they opened up relations with Azerbaijan, which they recommended to the Israelis, and the Azeris opened up their hearts. And ever since, there were relations with Azerbaijan. Interesting enough, Turkey is now helping Azerbaijan with enmity to us, and we are friends with Azerbaijan, but we are not involved. The whole conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, in the enclave of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenians also became closer to us in the times of Kocherian, and with some American more opening things. But we are not players. We just were trying to have good relation with other countries in the region, and Azerbaijan was an interesting one. Why it became kind of like an important state suddenly? Because of the enmity of the Iranians, and because Iranians also have Azeris, and the kind of Azeris on the border of Iran. So people started to think that, wow, Israel is a friend of Azeris, and Iran is the enemy of Israel, and this is. But again, I can tell you, Pierre, one of the things that you have to understand in Pakistanis, lots of people also about Israelis and sometimes about the Jews have fantasies as if we have global rich. We in some ways, I would say, we encouraged such thought historically. even when we were powerless, we talked about ourselves as powerful. But you know, one has to put oneself and say, okay, where we have, where we don't. One should understand our size after all. We're not so small, but we're not so big. So sometimes, we have some relations, but we are immaterial in Armenia or in Azerbaijani conflict. These are long-standing conflicts on the enclave. How will they be resolved has nothing to do with us. We are watching from afar. But whenever there is any report about maybe Israel sold this weapon, immediately they say Israel is involved. It's, there's so much kind of like, it's part of our history, perhaps. It's really part of our history. And I teach this class. Today I was teaching via Zoom. I don't know if I told you, I wrote this book called The Israeli Century and the Israelization of Judaism. Because we, as a people of exile and diaspora, I asked the question, after 2,000 years, suddenly becoming the people of sovereignty and the people of nationhood, which is quite interesting. And zeroing in on our nation and our nation state and restoring our ancient ties to Jerusalem and to the patrimony of the King David and Solomon and so on. And we ask about these things, about what happened in between, about perceptions and misperceptions. Why we were such relations with the Christians and with the Muslims as a people who basically envision the Almighty as the world, as the God of history. And that is we're trying to explain, and how it gave us a certain position in the world, but also vilified us because other inherited supposedly our ancient role. And so there's so much discussion about us because we are always kind of trusted in the dramas of world history, notwithstanding the fact that we were really very small players, or even not at all, wiped out, completely irrelevant. But the legacy remains, and sometimes the legacies are much larger than life, as you know. They are kind of like creating life of their own.
Yeah. Agree. So, Dr. Yossi, I'm really thankful for your time. And by the way, if the minister calls you again, pay him my regards. Ask him, I would love to have him on my show in this interview if he likes. And maybe that's an opening of a new door.
I certainly will tell him, but I can tell you also, he doesn't call me too often. I
No,
think
but
that they,
I guess,
I think after they saw the article in the newspaper, so there was kind of an interest.
yeah.
I think right now they're complete.
Hmm,
All of them are kind of engaged with the fight of COVID 19
yeah.
because the government may collapse because of not delivering work,
Hmm,
and unemployment is growing, and the lockdowns and
hmm,
the mayhem, or I don't want the mayhem, but I would say the chaotic situation that we went into, and the government failed in the second round in dealing with COVID, and now they have to pick up the pieces, and the opposition, as you know, in democracy, is also in the streets and
hmm.
demonstrating and so on. So I don't know what will happen, but I promise you, if he
By the way,
calls,
in this regard, we can help you. By the way, in this regard, Pakistan can help is right. Pakistan is one of the countries who have fought the COVID situation very well.
so tell us. I would be delighted to learn.
But the policies were made by our prime minister. So again, I don't have any access to my prime minister directly. But of course, I guess they should share their experience with the world because they have done a tremendous job. They have done a tremendous job. Now we are expecting a second wave of COVID, but again, there is a full campaign on full swing. They are telling everyone to have uh, distance, to have precautionary measures, and they have done really a fantastic job. And I guess they can help not only Israel but the world by sharing their experiences and their knowledge about how they fought with it. On the same time, we have fought with terrorism in the best way in the history of the world. In last 20 years, Pakistani forces, Pakistani government, Pakistani state defeated terrorism within 20 years. Otherwise, we know, and who knows better than you, that terrorism is such a chronicle problem. When it appears, it doesn't go just like that. It takes long time to get fixed. But Pakistan has done tremendous job in fighting against terrorism and now preventing the nation from corona. Good.
We are. I'm sure the people here would love to learn, and I'm sure you have lots to offer. And
Yeah.
one thing I can assure you, Pierre, as I suggested early on, that once we zero in on a subject, it can be one subject,
Mm,
it can be COVID, it can be the fight against terrorism, and we can
mm,
assemble experts and people will speak, and you enlarge the circle
mm,
of people who are, and once the borders are opening up and things, the speed in which these things can happen, if there is goodwill and good
mm.
leadership, as I said,
Yeah.
be really
Mm,
surprising. But that
yeah.
requires maturity, understanding, and it's not. It has to be. You don't have to take it. You have to plan it. Don't you
Mm,
know? You have to plan it because there will
mm.
always be spoilers. Spoilers are
Yeah. Yeah.
always have the ability to be interjected into situation and very quickly destroy them. So, um, but you can do it. Yeah, we can do it, and we see that it's being done elsewhere. We hope it will be cultivated more. As I said, the
Yeah.
geopolitical arena is very critical. We will all wait for
Mm,
the results of the next election in America and where America is standing. And its position was always critical, both in your region and our region.
mm.
And it's not so, we see what's going on in America right now. So
Yeah.
we we have to keep hoping, and we continue to talk.
Yeah. For sure. And I'm I'm sure about two things at least. One, my own commitment with peace, and second, my invitation to you
Thank
to
you.
be my guest in Pakistan.
I can't wait. I told you, you open up, I'm coming. Yeah.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome.
Okay, dear.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
good care
you.
of
And
yourself. It is
send
always
my
nice
best
to talk to
regards
you.
to all the good wishes.
Thank you. Same here.
All the best. Bye bye.